in your opinion, swimming against current is a way to bring back progressive reform to a particular society, where in a society where everybody's swimming in a way, in a current, the progressive way is to swim against current? Is it the principle?
I like that.
Yeah.
I think from the way I look at things, I would say no. I think life in itself is for syncretizers, those who can syncretize ideas.
What is a syncretizer?
Those who can bring in many perspectives and form something new.
Okay.
So it's not necessarily you going against the people like that. You can be disruptive, and but your destructive heart is because you know how to bring from different sources. So by the time you bring out something new, it's almost like you are destructive. Meanwhile, you have built it from several traditions. You get. So it's not like you going against you, like this guy would say, the guy that wrote Mastery.
Robert Greene.
Yeah. And he said you have to be given to the task of the previous generation. Try to, to devote time to studying it. Then it's by you devoting yourself to it, and honestly that you can then begin to see what their flaws, what they did, and you move beyond the realm of seeing it as a science. You then begin to see it as a art, healthy. You just see it as a creative endeavor.
The physics as a research field.
Yeah, because it's when I pick the Bible, how I interpret the Bible will be different from the way somebody who is religious would see it. For me, I might just say, okay, I don't want to. I like the Jewish literature because it is not just talking about sayings compared to what you see in other Abrahamic traditions. Theirs is different because it's more like experiences, and you have several experiences in the Old Testament.
I love experiences.
Yeah,
they give you the test first and the lesson later.
Yeah. So now it's even talking about the experiences as they through their own eyes, and that's how I'm going to see it. I'm not going to see it like theirs is the perfect, is the truth, like many people picture it around the world. I'm just going to say I want to see how this culture experience this divinity. And I want to go to that culture and I want to see how they experience divinity. So, but what I'm now doing like that is just to it's not like I really want to come up with my own way or my own religion. I do not plan. I'm just trying to I'm not trying to also say they are not, it's just some old guys that are doing fairy tale stuff that I do not know what they are doing. And I want to take them seriously, and I want to also be objective to know that they have their own interpretation of things, and they are also likely to inject their own bias into the literature, into the write-up, So I go in with that awareness, and so when I read it, I'm looking at their experiences, and I'm looking at how they are what they are ascribing as causality, what they are what they are writing to be the causality of certain experiences, and it's possible I critique it and say this cannot be a cause. This is them imposing their own bias into what they are talking about here, so it's different. You can see that my approach will definitely make what I'm taking out of the Bible different from what somebody else would take out of the Bible, and so for me, I'm trying to look at, okay, I'm not saying that God as their own. I'm just seeing it as a force in nature,
like an impersonal force.
If it does to make prayer easy, to relate with God, we can personify it. It makes things understandable for us when we give things a form. That just this, when we say devil, do we really mean devil as a person? But yes, when we say it as a person, it makes it real to us, because this is who we are, we're a person. So we have to always. I'm not somebody who just. I can at the back of my mind, I can know that God is a energy field, but I want to personify it so that I can relate with it better. You get what I'm saying? So I'm still. This is not the discussion of whether is it truly personal, is it impersonal. It's not something I want to really. It's not an area I want to really. It's not a contradiction that I really want to resolve, because it doesn't really matter to me. Because for me, I can appreciate why it could be impersonal, and I can appreciate why it is personal. For my own small head to be able to comprehend it and to relate with it, I need it to be personal, So that is that. So yeah, but at the same time, I do not see it like a force that knows that has chosen the people, rather than I could just come to the conclusion that if the people are going through slavery, it is important for the God of the universe to come to their aid. And that was the story of the Jew. They were slaves in the house of Egypt. They were slaves, So for 400 years, that is injustice, So it is normal for a God that is just to find its way and take them out of that mess. You understand what I'm saying? And bring back justice again. It's so it's rather than a chosen people. No, it's I can still read the Bible and take that message out of it. I can just see that, okay, there's a phenomenon here that is looking to rescue a people that are suffering, and why shouldn't he want to rescue them? After all, he's a God, is a God of the universe, and I don't have to ascribe that chosen quality to them, But every literature, every tradition always have a way of saying they are the chosen people. So it is, if you are now make the mistake of believing that you throw away your literature and then believe that people are chosen people, it's not good for you. You have to make sure that when you are farming, you farm it to your side. So you farm it to your side.
For sure. Or if you're lying to elevate yourself.
Exactly.
Do not lie to be like a deceiver, but lie to elevate yourself.
Yeah, and this aspect of lie is what I also find it's very funny when people who do not understand, you talk about lie to elevate yourself, not lie to harm people. They are two different things.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's because you know these subtle things, that people take for granted.
Like for example, like someone can ask you, how much does this scarf cost? You bought it, it was €5. Lying to elevate yourself, you can say, oh, it was €10,000. Like an example like that.
To me, these are issues that are not, it might not make sense, it might be childish, but there are so many amoral issues, or amoral, I don't know how, amoral issues that are not necessarily right or wrong, but it just doesn't make sense. So many issues are like that, but to want to just reduce every subject matter to right and wrong, it's the mistake I'd say religious people make, and that goes to the issue, the lie you talked about. To me, lying to prevent harm from coming your way is an immoral issue, it's an immoral issue, and so it's yeah, that's it for me. Or being just silent, you're not saying anything, you're not giving false opinions, you're not, at the same time you're not giving the statement that should be made, you're just, we do that all the time, but we don't see that as wrong, because you didn't clearly lie, but at the same time you've hidden an information, so I just feel it's good to know, although in the court system they say you are abating when you hide an information.
Abating, what does that mean?
More like you are, it's more like, let's say they want to probe somebody, and then you chose not to provide the information.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't really know about that, but my point is that, so we can talk about issue of legality, and we can talk about morality as relating to spirituality. For me, I don't think a spiritual entity as interesting a moral issue. I don't think many of the things that you would even see that people do to materialize who they will end up becoming as in terms of their destiny is something that are moral, but it's to people who are overcritical and dogmatic, they will think it is a moral issue, so yeah, if you, so to me, I like the ancient Near East culture, all this, because they are ancient Near East. You're talking about the Babylonians, the Assyrians. I strongly believe that these are the first civilization. These are the civilization that first existed. So I think one can, learn so much from them. So I love reading about the Anunnakis, the Gilgamesh story.
The Epic of Gilgamesh, right?
Gilgamesh, yeah, and the
Anunnaki?
No. Anunnaki code, the code of law of there are some cultures, they had their own laws, and we call it Anunnaki or Hammurabi, something like that. But it's more like the workings of the law of the Sumerians, or their law works, so, and you had the Egyptians, they had the 42 laws of Mahat. So it's always good to just understand this civilization. You would realize that there are truths there, in terms of spiritual truths, but it is also people trying to build their civilization as well. So you would also find things that they are symbolic practices, So the question is the question to ask is what are the reasons for the symbols, the symbolic practices, and if you can get to that meaning, you can definitely reinvent it, or find a new symbol that can help you achieve that
Like
objective.
re-engineer it.
Yeah, re-engineer it.
Mm.
I love the Titan principles. The Titan.
Mm.
I feel if you are going to build a good community, which I think it is important you make sure that everybody contributes. Now, and like I said, it's a taxation system, quite alright. But as a community too, remember a community, and you're a member of a community, there should be a way in which we are all a contributory fee, sort of, and we should have this contributory fee should have a goal that regenerates the community.
Basically, like ants.
That's
Ants.
ends in what sense?
Ants, like the insects.
Insect. Oh,
Yeah, the ants.
Yeah.
They're super organized.
Yeah.
Every member of their communities are carrying goods for the community to thrive
Yeah.
during seasons.
Yeah. So the purpose should be to make sure the community is alive, and to ensure to make sure the community has a life of its own, and we are regenerating it, and make it adaptive. If that contributory fee is there, it helps people do that,
It regenerates.
It regenerates.
It gives it re-oxygenizes the
Exactly.
community.
Yeah.
And when you're oxygenized, you can think at a higher level. Like you can think more creatively, more innovatively, more artistically, explore more avenues, and bring back to the community. So it just keep on.
Because the source of fund is there.
Yeah.
And if that funding is there, you can look okay, architecturally, what should we do better, whether I would like it or not. I spoke to you about the role of architecture and patriotism, or nationalism. You could see that every mystical community, be the Hindus, they pay so much attention to temple. What is it called? The Catholics, you see them at their massive architecture. So when you see Christianity as a religion, as a source of identity for people, you get it's always the source of identity. That's why it's always the first thing people corrupt.
Yeah.
So, because when they're trying to corrupt it, they're trying to corrupt the identity of the people. So, So, and you build massive architecture around it. It brings a sense of patriotism. There's a way it affects the psychology of the community. It's even why I would argue that many organizations in Nigeria today, I wouldn't say, but put so much effort into building massive architecture. Why? It's simply because it's people need wonder. People need a sense of wonder, and when they see those wonders, it's like, wow, this is a representation of God on earth.
But it didn't originated with the Christians.
I'm not saying, like I said, it's across civilization.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying that it's a representation of God here on earth. So when people it's developed a sense of pride, a sense of loyalty, a sense of patriotism.
I would say even collective self-esteem, even.
Yeah, collective self-esteem.
Collective self-esteem, which is what we're lacking as a community.
So it's in the sense of no religion is that's what's I mean, sacred site is not something that people try to make massive across all civilization. You know, sacred sites are meant to be massive, are meant to be gigantic, and to be beautiful. But I'm just saying that I'm not interested in the spiritual connotation, but I'm just telling you, maybe God said anybody should build it for them, but I'm telling you the psychological and the sociological implication of those sacred sites to the people that surround it.
Which is identity.
Identity, yes. You know, so it gives them a sense of patriotism. They're loyal because God, look at God on earth, you know. So, yeah. So that is why, the something like that's tithes, or I'm not talking about tithes in Christian or Christianity, or really talking about what it means to the Jew here, you know, as a taxation system. So, you know, it's for me, it's a wonderful practice. It's a practice that, you know, you could ensure that the synagogues moves from one place to another, you know, and now you can see that practice, but you don't have to. You can then tweak it, you know, re-engineer it for communal purposes. Something that it's not about you just doing it. You know, people have a contributory fee. That's how I even want to say it. A contributory fee of the members of the community. It's when there's a contributory fee, there's people can then look at programs, events, whatever they want to, architectural design, you know, whatsoever that they can do to keep the community, the life of the community regenerating itself on its own, you know. So yeah, but now when people are saying that system is corrupted, then you might think you are smart, but at the end of the day, you are also crumbling the community slowly. You know, because.
What do you mean by that?
Yeah, because you can imagine. Let's say you bring all the contributory fee, and the priest, you know, or the head of the member of our community, you know, begins to use that money to get fat and bigger. So in the short term, they might feel like they've won, but in the long term, they are destroying their own community. So everything I've said now, I don't need the spiritual understanding to understand it. Spiritual and to say God is going to destroy it, I can just look at it from psychology and sociology and say, at the end of the day, this system will collapse itself. Because for a society to keep working, for a system to keep regenerating itself, trust must continuously. Trust must be very important.
Trust must be the cause.
Trust must be the cause, and people must see that it is serving their own good as well. You know, so it's in other words, it is benefiting everybody. If it's no longer benefiting everybody and it's just benefiting just a few people, then it will disintegrate on its own. So yeah, that's it.
Wow. That's very Thought-provoking for sure.
So, reading the Jewish story, you you can, as a metaphysics, one can just say, how does this how does this force, how does it relate to people as perceived by these people, and you don't have to create your own identity out of it. You are just going there to see, to learn, and to ask, and that's where it stops. Not necessarily that anybody is giving you an identity out of it. No, you're just going there. You are trying to go into the culture, the lens at which they see this experience, and they observe this phenomenon, and you are trying to say, you can critique, you can say this portion shouldn't be there. In other words, because you don't create, you don't go in thinking everything is perfect. You can say this, it's plausible, this is, and you can then ask questions and say, what are the psychological implications of these symbols, or the sociological implications of these? Because that, like I said, this love thy neighbor as thyself, it's strictly communal science. It has to do with how do we build a better community, and that is social science to me. And I can go in there and just try to understand that civilization without necessarily having seen anything spiritual out of it. Yes, I can see taking some spiritual aspects, but I can also see the sociological and psychological aspect that in itself creates a healthy community. And if they're able to create a healthy community on their own, then they will be blessed, and you can then say God bless them. But they have at least done the work themselves. so to me, that's why I always said self-sacrifice is still the best form of sacrifice. It's not animal, yes, but it won't serve the community as a whole. It might just serve individuals, and unfortunately, individual success is also dependent on the community success. So it makes so no matter how people want to do it, that community, or what creates whatever it's going to create a healthy community, is really the most important thing. So we must, on that basis, we must also continuously engage in reforms, because what's created a healthy community might not create a healthy community tomorrow. But I think God is love, and to me, if there is one law one must hold, that is, God is love. So that everything must be looked through that lens. Everything must be understood through that lens as you even make reforms in your society. So that is it.
One should always critique also their ways. It's a constant process of self-criticism.
Yeah, self-criticism. Many cultures have talks about it. Circumstances are the ones that are going to let you critique what you do. Because if you keep having positive circumstances of a particular practice, you don't have to. Nobody change your winning tactics.
That's true.
Yeah. So, but if circumstances are pointing that, hey, Mr. Man, we've been giving blow here. We've been giving there. Okay, it's time to go into a quiet place, and then don't do it because you are in a depressed state, like you've lost your self-esteem, and you are ready to take anything everybody's bringing your way. That happens to people, but that's not the way it should be. You should know what you must understand what you believe, and then begin to probe, like, okay, why is this thing even, why is this practice there in the first place? You know, we must first to understand the why of what we are trying to get rid of. You know, if we've understood the why, then we can then see hacks. We can then hacks a much more a question that projects us into the future. Like, okay, do we still need this this to happen going forward? You know, if we need it going forward, then we might find a way. The heart comes in again. If way of we are not here, we are not there. So then just and then do give it a balance, and just put something that can keep it going and say good. You know,
Wow.
you know, I there's this thing I need to say in there was when Christianity came into Yoruba territory. You know, it was people that could you believe that there's this story that they casted the far, and it was Christianity was encouraged, like they should calm them, that it's going to bring progress. You know, and those were the Egba people, because they were the first people who, in fact, it was the elite of the Egba community that
We encourage Christianity.
in our space.
Okay.
Yeah. So, so they said it was going to bring prosperity, and it was going to bring prosperity. Now, the point is this: if I look into history well enough, and I'm looking at our history, I would say yes, it has brought a measure of stability. The why? Because, you know, and I'm going to say this, civilizations. Christianity is a civilization, you know, and then you have other civilizations that are contending for your space. Like I said, you all contend over space. So, if there was not an hegemonic civilization to balance another hegemonic civilization that was invading your space, it would have been so corrosive and coercive. I'm trying to be as abstract as I can.
That's why my eyebrows are raising.
I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to just be abstract. If you have a civilization coming in, an hegemonic civilization, and you also have another hegemonic civilization, okay, let me put it this way. The wisdom is this: if you have a civilization that cannot contend an hegemonic civilization, you then need another hegemonic civilization to keep it in balance. So, yeah. So it is that way. Pending the time you get yourself, you put yourself in order, you balance yourself, you have the time to re-engineer, retool, to then come out again afresh.
Yeah, I need to marinate that.
So we can just so let's just leave it at that. Yeah.
Let leave it open and
Open for interpretation, because it's live, so let's leave it open.
Yeah. Well, Oshe, very much again for this amazing conversation, this helpful conversation. Like, I'm sure that this conversation is helpful and rich. And the way I see it, to go back to your analogy about the mountain climbers, I think one day too people will regard this conversation like, oh, they were the mountain climbers. Let's get some gems from the mountain climbers. So for me, that's what this kind of discussion is basically like a message through time that people in the future, 2030, 2040, 50, 2100, could go back and see, the state of consciousness and everything that surrounded that was going on at that time, and use it as a stepping stone to go wherever they aspire to. And before,
So, in a nutshell, I would say spirituality does not really. Religion is more like a framework, and it's not God. And so spirituality does not really care about. It's ready to use any religion to achieve its own objective.
which is
No, it's my point is that spirituality is different from religion. Religion is a vehicle to God, but it's not God itself or himself. So spirituality can then be used. Spirituality can then use any religion to achieve its objective. Yeah. So that's how I would just like us to conclude. So if the Gnostics understood that very well, and the Gnostic would say, where they could see the beauty in every tradition, and they could tag along. They could see powerful practices in this tradition, and they could join them in engaging in those practices, to assess divinity. But divinity does not really care how you categorize and the categorization you are giving yourself. That's it.
because it cannot be confined.
It cannot be confined, yes.
A divinity defined is a divinity confined, and if it's confined, it's basically contradicts the nature of it. So
and that's why I normally say I go about when I see theology of names. Name is like we said, it's language is an human invention. So when people say a particular name is sacred, it's more like it's, to me, it's I still find the flaw in that reasoning, because if God cannot be described, and the only thing you can then describe are things. The things you can describe are the things you can give a name to. It then tells me something. I can infer something, from these two statements. God cannot be described. You say it's like God is indescribable. And then the only thing you can describe are what you can give name to. We can describe cup, we can describe the laptop,
we can describe this.
So, my own, to the best of my understanding, I think whenever we just give a name to something, we can only describe an aspect of that thing. And that is what I see in spirituality when people talk about names. Because when because I'm particular about names, like, okay, what is the meaning of that name? Okay, this name means this. Okay, so what about these attributes? What other names goes with that? this is the name we then call it in relation to this attribute. So you can then see symbol or syntax and meanings going hand in hand. And we can then, give this syntax and symbols, we can then give it to different attributes, as many attributes as we want. In Yoruba, we say Olodumare. Olodumare is, I think it means something that cannot be an inexhaustible, something that is inexhaustible.
Okay.
You keep taking it never exhausts. That's an attribute. But even though we might say it like, we can also say Oluwa, which is Olorun, which means the owner of heavens. But does that capture the essence of God in totality?
That's the question.
Yeah, so that's the question. So it's just good to leave it blank. But does that capture the essence of God in totality? If it does not, then it means that we must think about how the theology of name calling. People thinking a name does, that a name can do something, but okay, let's say I'm looking for God to provide for me, and I'm saying, God the provider, provide for me. I'm talking about his attributes of provision, of providing for me. But I think it is much more than calling that name. I think our state of consciousness must be that God provides,
like a father who provides for his children,
and our willingness to put that to see it as something we are confident in, to have faith that God provides. It's what to me really matters the most. Because when I want to study when I'm interested in the attributes of God, I'm studying it because I'm trying to look at these different attributes. I'm trying to know what I can be sure or conscious of what he does. It's in other words, to embed in me a state of consciousness of what he does. And in that case, that's one thing I know. Like, now, if I can establish God the provider, the beautiful thing about the Judean literature is that you can then go through several stories of God exhibiting the attributes of a provision. So in several circumstances and stories, you can see a providing force in nature. You can see it in the story of the children of Israelites when they didn't have anything in the desert, but they were fed for 40 good years. You get what I'm saying? But immediately they got into the land where they can now do things for themselves, the divine provision stopped. So it tells you the conditions of provisions, of supernatural provisions, whereby it is when you cannot help yourself, that is when you should think God would come in supernaturally to help you. Now, it is probably this story, even though it might be a synchronicity for the children of Israelites, I can experience. And the truth of the matter is that you can also go into the Yoruba literature and see experiences of divine provisions, of a force coming from nowhere through maybe animal or through delivering something for people. You could also see an element of divine provision. So for me, but that is not God in totality. It's just an aspect of him that we must continuously bring into our remembrance. So I think the essence of name calling is really is to bring into our remembrance the very attribute of a person. Not necessarily because the name is that which matters. It is the meaning of that name that should really matter. That is really what I'm getting at. The name, the meaning of that name is what should really matter, not the name itself. Because the name is just a symbol. Yeah.
What is the meaning of your name?
God is victorious. God won. Yeah.
And is it supposed to be a representative of the totality, just one attribute from the totality of God itself?
No.
The meaning?
It's not a representation of God in totality. Yeah.
No. One of the one of his attributes.
One of his attributes. Yes, I would say. I mean, there are many verses of the Bible that God is mighty and victorious in battle. You know, and you can also look at how he fought the battles of a particular people against people. Maybe in the case of Pharaoh, how they won the battle against Pharaoh, how he was fighting their battles for them. So you could also establish that very attribute is in the story too. So yeah, for me it's just an aspect, but that we should always have to bring it to our remembrance, but not necessarily. I see that people play too much emphasis on name and a particular language, and that they want to call God, So for me, I just consider it baby metaphysics. That's how I see it. Yeah. So I think when people really are matured enough, they would understand that it is a state of consciousness. A state of consciousness is something that you bring into your remembrance of the very attribute of God, and how that should reaffirm your faith, your consciousness, and that itself is power. That itself is positivity, and if it brings positivity, then it will create. You will manifest. You understand what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
I do. I mean, that is basically in my nation, the Mosi people, like the names that we give are like they have this word God, and in my native tongue we said Wende, and Wend is the diminution of Wende. And Kiswendsida, for example, like the Wend is a diminution of Wende. And Kiswendsida, like, is 3 syllable, Kis, Wend, and Sida. Kis mean give, Wend mean God, Sida mean truth. But the real name is have faith in God.
Have faith in God, yeah.
Yeah, so that's just one name amongst the Mosi. There's many. There's Rel Wende, there's Wen Kuni, there's Wen Barka. Wen Barka is mean.
Yeah, that's Oluwa to us.
Yeah.
Your own is when ours is Oluwa means God. Yeah, God provides, God does this, God does that.
Yeah, it's the same, and it's all about, like, I mean, the way you said it, like, it's a state of consciousness that you want to reaffirm into your offspring.
Yeah.
And it's a science that was common knowledge, like just like 1 + 1 is common knowledge is equal to 2. And a lot of African societies in pre-colonial time, it was common knowledge that you want to give to your offspring, your daughter, your son, a name to reaffirm positively, so it can manifest.
It can manifest, yeah.
Yeah, for me it's an art that needs to come back massively. So
yeah.
Let's hope that this will be like a seed that will grow into a big garden in our communities and bring good stuff. So thank you to have watched so far, and keep on the good energy and rotation. Okay.
Yeah, nice having you around.
Yeah. Oshe.
Thank you very much.